A few years ago, when my daughter still lived with me, she brought a kitten home. It was late at night after her shift at Voodoo Chicken Restaurant and Bar. Now, normally, I would have no problem with her bringing home a cat or a kitten. As it were. We already had 7 cats, and we fostered cats on a regular basis. To say the least, I like cats. A lot. But there was something off about this new kitten, and instead of all the warm and happy feelings I usually experience when meeting a new kitten, I was instantly opposed to the idea of actually keeping this cat. It rolled its big, muddy green eyes up to me and meowed, and I thought again that something was wrong with her. Seeing the disappointment on my daughter's face, I decided to give the cat a chance. My daughter pointed out all the times I had fostered cats that were disabled, sick, or had behavioral problems. She said I always figured out how to give those cats a chance, so I should try to give this one a chance. And she had already decided the cat was hers. She said it had chosen her. It was around 2 in the morning by that time. I reluctantly told her that she could keep the cat for a trial run, but it had to go to the vet as soon as possible. We couldn't risk our 7 cats catching something from the kitten. My daughter agreed. I thought maybe it would be okay. I asked what she was going to name the cat. Akasha Athena Bean, she announced. I knew she had given that name a lot of thought. That's a long name. Care if I just call her Akasha? Well, yeah, that's what I'm gonna call her. Smiling broadly, she scooped up the kitten and went to her room. I stopped by her door a little later and told her to be sure to keep the kitten in her room for the night. I really didn't want Akasha roaming freely until she had been checked out by the veterinarian, because I still got a pit in my stomach every time I looked at her, and I couldn't pinpoint why. The first 2 weeks were an adjustment period for all the cats and for me. I should have been used to having a kitten around. As a foster, plenty of kittens had been left in my care over the years, but every time Akasha appeared suddenly from under a piece of furniture or out of a dark corner, I startled inside and something in me recoiled. At first it was bad, but over 14 days my reaction lessened until it felt like I was finally getting used to her being around. My daughter, however, had no problems at all. Then again, she worked a job that had her out of the house for about 12 hours, 5 or 6 days a week. I was stuck there, 24/7, because I worked from home. So my daughter didn't see how Akasha lurked in the shadows, staring at me with those muddy green eyes, or the way she eyed the other cats, or the way she looked murderous right before she attacked their faces and tried to claw their eyes. She was less than 3 months old, weighed practically nothing in comparison to my other cats, and yet she would attack them, go in for the kill. No fear, no hesitation, and without provocation. I spent most of my time trying to keep her away from the others without exiling her to a closed room or a kennel. But then, the kennel was another disaster. I had finally relented and had to put her in the kennel. She had gone beast mode on every glass knick-knack she could reach and bit the blood out of one of my other cats. She tore a hole in his ear before I could get to them and grab her. I'd had enough, and I put her in the kennel so I could work for a few hours. 10 minutes into my work, I heard a high-pitched, blood-curdling yowl from the other room. I ran to see what was going on. Akasha had pushed her head through the bars on the kennel in an escape attempt. Her head fit, but the rest of her body didn't, and she was stuck. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. I panicked a little when I saw her, but I freed her and everything was okay. But later, I had to put her back into the kennel after she bit one of my other cats in the face and made it bleed. She sat right in the center, silent and glaring at me with a look that chilled me a little. Needing desperately to work, I pushed the feeling aside, tended the other cat's wounds, and then went back to work. I heard my daughter's car pull into the graveled driveway several hours later. I went to unlock the door. Akasha was curled into a little fuzzy bed in the corner of the kennel. It was such a relief that she was finally calm. I walked by, telling her that she was a good girl. She lifted her head and watched as I went into the kitchen to grab a drink. My daughter walked into the living room. She started yelling in a panic, and I ran back in there. "Oh my God," she exclaimed, throwing the kennel door open. "How did you not notice this, Mom?" Her voice was squeaky and breaking as she screamed. Akasha was on her side, head stuck through the bars, tongue lolled out of the side of her mouth, lifeless. My heart skipped. I moved closer, telling my daughter that the cat was fine only a few seconds ago. "This isn't fine, Mother," she screamed as she removed Akasha gently, cuddling her and starting to cry. "I can't believe you," she said as she stormed back out the door. She rushed Akasha to the emergency vet, paid a huge bill, and returned 3 hours later. Akasha had a clean bill of health. Her ordeal hadn't done any lasting damage. Now, I couldn't convince my daughter that Akasha had been fine only seconds before she had come in from work, but she had been. I had walked right by her. I had talked to her. I couldn't figure out what exactly had happened, and I started to doubt what I knew. I mean, had I somehow seen her laying in her bed all comfy and sleepy when in fact she'd been laying at death's door with her neck stuck between the bars, seconds from death? Now, another week had passed. Akasha and I were still not friends. No matter what I did, she remained distant and mistrustful. Her violent outbursts toward the other cats became worse. The veterinarian said she was just rambunctious and full of energy, but I didn't believe that. There had to be something more, but the vet was adamant that Akasha was healthy and perfectly normal. 2 more weeks passed. I was stressed. All 7 of the cats were stressed. My daughter was stressed because I was at odds with her cat and believing something was wrong with her. The only one not stressed was Akasha. As a matter of fact, she would jump up into the windowsill and sit there looking very content, very pleased with herself, especially after she would attack our oldest cat, who was 17 in human years. Heidi was our OG. She'd been through the worst with us, and we were both protective of her. Akasha wouldn't attack Heidi if my daughter was in the house, though. She only did it when Renee was gone, and Renee never believed that the attacks were happening at all. Now, let me preface this next part by saying that none of the cats were outdoor cats. They were all indoor, all the time. And the foster cats stayed in the tiny little home a few hundred feet from our main house. They never interacted with our cats. My male cat started digging like he had fleas, and then he started fussing with his ears. All 7 of our cats visit the vet regularly, and they're all on that $35 a month medication that protects them from all parasites. But there we were with Loki digging and yowling. This went on for 3 days before I could get him to the vet's office for a visit. Nothing I did at home helped him, and actually seemed to make it worse. The doctor clucked her tongue and shook her head at me as if I had done something wrong. She accused me of not putting Loki's medicine on him and told me how bad the ear mite infection was and how miserable he must be. Then she told me I needed to bring any of the other cats in for a visit if they were showing similar symptoms. I left feeling like a heel, but after taking the other cats to her, I felt lower than a slug's belly. The vet made sure of it in her passive-aggressive way. The last cat I took for treatment that day was Akasha. I hadn't seen her shaking her head, scratching at fleas, nothing. And so when I picked her up to put her in the carrier, I checked her ears. There was nothing, just 2 healthy ears. I didn't see any fleas on her either. I did end up with scratches over both of my arms and hands for my effort, though. 15 minutes later, I opened the door to the vet's office, and Akasha started rolling and crying like she was in misery in the carrier. The vet took one look at her and said she nearly looked dead from all the fleas on her. Now, I knew that wasn't right, but the vet convinced me that if Akasha had only begun acting that way, then maybe she picked up the dropped fleas in the carrier that the other cats had left behind. As she was putting the medicine on Akasha's neck, I swear to God that cat smirked and winked at me. I gasped, and she was just a normal cat again. I took her back to the car. We stared at each other for a full minute, neither of us blinking nor looking away. There was an intelligence in her eyes that felt almost human, malevolent. I imagine a psychopath would look that way right before plunging a knife into someone. "I'm on to you," I said, and that fucking cat just stared at me. "You're not really a cat, are you?" Now, of course, she didn't answer. It's a cat. I mean, I kind of wish she had, though. If she had spoken, I would have ended it right there. I would have taken her straight to the shelter and been done with her. Done with the whole mess. And I wouldn't have a horror story to tell. But I didn't. And I do. Akasha was setting me up so that I seemed like I was crazy and a terrible person towards animals. I stopped complaining so much about her after the vet visit. I got tired of trying to explain the various situations caused by the seemingly cute and normal kitten. A full 3 months had passed with Akasha in the house. Nothing had gotten easier where she was concerned. One of my other cats had taken to remain hidden in the master bathroom all the time. She rarely came out because every time she stepped out, Akasha attacked. Unless, of course, my daughter was there. And then, of course, Akasha was the epitome of cuteness, and it made me sick. I had grown to dislike Akasha, and actually resented her presence in the house. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, and what you're saying. Akasha was simply acting out because she felt the tension. She felt your dislike of her, and it made her uncomfortable. 3 months. 3 whole months. After bringing the kitten home, Renee and her boyfriend decided to move in together. The place they were renting didn't allow pets, so guess who was stuck caring for this cat? Me, of course. With Renee rarely around anymore, Akasha's behavior escalated, or spiraled, depending on how you looked at it, I guess. She got worse in every way imaginable. At the end of the first week after Renee moved out, Akasha got into my bedroom while I was asleep and bit my cheek. She sank her teeth into my face hard. This wasn't a playful nip. It wasn't that cute little nuzzling thing some kittens do either. She brought blood. A lot of it, too. Naturally, being startled awake by pain like that, I batted her away with a hand and forearm. She screamed and hit the floor. I don't even know how she got into the room. I was in the habit of bringing the other cats into the bedroom at night to keep them away from her. My door was closed. There was a tiny gap under it, but I knew no animal could squeeze through that half-inch gap. I had to get up and open the door to let her out. She snarled and growled and hissed as she ran by me. The other cats ran under the bed and stayed there. I demanded that Renee get the cat, or I was getting rid of her. I couldn't take it anymore. Renee tried to get her landlord to agree about bringing Akasha to live with her, but he wouldn't hear of it. And later, Renee visited and begged me to keep the cat. I peeled off the bandage on my face and showed her the 4 holes where Akasha had bitten me in my sleep. "She didn't do it to be malicious, Mom. You were probably snoring, or maybe you had sleep apnea and stopped breathing in your sleep. She might have been worried about you." She picked up the cat and started baby talking to her and cuddling her. Akasha purred, rolled around in Renee's lap, and then gave her a happy little headbutt before jumping to the arm of the chair and facing me. "See, Mom, she's just a kitten. I don't know what your deal is with her." Akasha smirked and narrowed her eyes at me. I pointed to her, and by the time Renee turned to her, she was back to normal. "What?" Renee looked back to me. Akasha bared her teeth in a soundless snarl. My heart skipped a beat. I wouldn't allow the cat to stay another day. Renee and I argued for about 30 minutes. "If you get rid of her, I'll never speak to you again." Furious, she stormed out of the house to go to work. I felt bad for my daughter and for arguing with her, but I just couldn't do it anymore. That cat had to go. I loaded her into the carrier. She went without a fight for the first time. She was the picture of cuteness when the woman at the shelter checked her in. I told her about Akasha's behavior problems with other cats, but she was so busy petting and being goofy with the cat that she barely heard anything I said. The next day, Renee and I argued again. She was going to get the cat and sneak it into her apartment. She said people did it all the time. I tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't listen. She was pissed at me, and she would be for a long time. She said that if she and her boyfriend lost the apartment because of the cat, it would be my fault. 2 days later, I was watching the local news over breakfast. The shelter had burned, and the woman I had spoken to was dead. My first thought was that Akasha had somehow caused the tragedy. And that was crazy, right? Maybe I was going crazy, though. I turned off the TV. My daughter texted me an hour later. Akasha had already been adopted by the time she reached the shelter, and Renee blamed me that she didn't have her cat. Man, she was so mad. Madder than I even remember her being over anything. That evening, while I was in the kitchen making a sandwich, a familiar feeling of being watched came over me. I turned, and there in the pantry in the darkest corner, the light glinted from 2 eyes. I recognized immediately. I dropped my sandwich on the floor and stepped back. Akasha casually sauntered over. She gave me a sideways glance and smirked as she sat and curled her tail around her feet. "Shoo!" I yelled, waving my arms. "You get out. I don't want you here." I opened the back door and used the broom to shove her out. In the middle of the night, I was woken by the sound of breaking glass. Fearing it was a burglar, I called the cops. After they came in and searched the place, I opened my door and went out to speak with them. They had found no sign of an intruder and thought it was most likely a vandal who broke the window and ran away. That didn't make any sense to me. As they were leaving, Akasha walked slowly out of my office and sat looking at the 2 cops calmly. I knew instantly that she had broken the window to get back in. In the morning, after being unable to sleep, I went to make coffee. There was a huge black snake curled in the sink. Akasha sat in the windowsill above it, looking at me with amusement in her eyes. I called Renee and I told her Akasha was at the house and that she needed to pick her up immediately. She said she would be there before her shift started. Akasha disappeared 5 minutes before Renee arrived. We searched everywhere, but the cat was gone. Renee went to work, and I did the same. I hoped the cat was really gone and wouldn't return. But I wasn't that lucky. The next day, the man showed up and fixed my broken window. After he left, I went to put the curtains back up, and there she was, sitting in the windowsill looking content and grooming. My heart dropped. Getting rid of Akasha wasn't going to be easy, and it would have nothing to do with luck. The doorbell rang. It was my niece. I hadn't seen her for a couple of months. She came in and we hugged. I told her I'd missed her. When I turned to start a pot of coffee, there was Akasha, sitting on the counter beside the coffee maker like she belonged there. She was staring hard at my niece, and then she looked at me. One corner of her mouth curled upward, and my niece saw it. She thought it was the cutest expression ever. I'd finally found someone who might believe me about the other things I'd seen the cat do. So I told her everything, even the parts that I knew might sound crazy or make me sound crazy, but she didn't laugh at me, didn't say I was nuts. She just listened and nodded every now and then. I finished with how Akasha had just smirked at me from the counter. I thought it was a warning that she would do some other horrible things soon. "You know it's just a cat, right?" my niece asked. "She can't just be a cat. I thought you believed me." She stood and looked at her watch. "Aunt Shelley, I think it's time for me to go. That's what I believe. And I believe you should probably lay off the left-handed cigarettes, too." I don't... You always freak yourself out over nothing. I mean, it was kind of fun when I was a kid, like the time you were convinced there was a werewolf in the woods out by the old home place. You remember that? I was 10, and I was so scared I would stay up at night watching my bedroom window for any sign of the werewolf. After a few days, Mom and Dad told me werewolves aren't real. It's just a story that you made up. And then after that, I pretended to believe. Hell, it was funny, Aunt Shelley. She put her hands on my shoulders and put her face close to mine. But I was a kid then, and I'm an adult now, and I have a ton of adult problems. I need real-world advice, real-world conversations, not fantasy right now. She pulled me into a brief hug, and then she was going out the door. She bent to pet Akasha, who was waiting on the mud rug by the door. Akasha let her stroke her back a couple of times, and then she attacked. I screamed at the cat and grabbed the broom. I chased her out of the door and down the walkway. My niece yelled at me to leave the cat alone. I stopped about halfway down the walkway, but the cat didn't. Tires squealed. It was over. I didn't turn around for several seconds. I knew what I would see, and I really didn't want to see it. There would be the whole situation with Renee, and she was going to be very, very upset. She would undoubtedly blame me for the cat's death. My niece ran past me, holding her bloody arm in hand. I finally turned around. It was every bit as bad as I had imagined it would be. My niece helped me, and we buried Akasha under the rose bush. It might make me a horrible person, but I couldn't help being relieved that I didn't have to put up with the thing that passed itself off as a cat. I dreaded breaking the news to my daughter, but in my heart of hearts, I was glad that Akasha was gone. That night after her shift, Renee came by to collect the cat. I brought her in, and we sat at the kitchen table. Then I told her as gently as I could what had happened. She wore a crooked smile and a slightly confused look. "She's dead," I said again. "I'm sorry, Renee, but she's gone. You could blame me if you want to, and maybe it was partially my..." Renee's nervous laugh made me stop. It was my turn to be confused. "I don't know what you're getting at, but she's not dead." Renee pointed behind me, and my blood ran icy. My whole body stiffened, and I shook my head. "It's true," she said. She put her hand down and wiggled her fingers for the cat. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see it. She had been mangled by the car. My niece saw it. There was no way Akasha was alive. "Mom, did you bury Akasha alive?" Renee asked. I opened my eyes. Renee dusted dirt at the cat's matted fur, and I tried to explain to her that her cousin had witnessed the whole thing, had helped me bury a very, very dead Akasha. But she scoffed in disbelief. "She's as crazy as you are. You've made up so many stories that you're starting to believe the fantasies are real, Mom. I'm taking Akasha. I'm coming back tomorrow, and we're going to go talk to someone." She stopped at the door and looked back. "You need help, Mom, and I can't do this anymore. The next morning, my daughter brought me the terrible news that my niece had been killed in a car wreck the previous evening. The next few weeks were a blur in my memory. I clearly remember Akasha following me around the cemetery when I went to my niece's grave. I remember knowing that somehow that demonic cat from hell had caused the death, and I very clearly remember getting the shotgun and shooting her in the basement. There wasn't enough of her to bury that time, and I didn't even bother trying. But just like every other time Akasha went missing, Renee came to my house looking for her. I let her look. I didn't tell her what I did. I just let her search. And I promised to keep an eye out for the cat when Renee got ready to leave. The next day, around lunchtime, I got a call that my best friend had died alone in her house the day before. I was crushed. 2 of the 3 most important people in my life were gone. My daughter left work early to be with me that first day. I was on the couch, and she went to get me a glass of water. She returned carrying Akasha, and I'm pretty sure I had a little mental breakdown then. And if it wasn't a small break, it was at the very least a fracture. Sometime after that, I woke on the couch with Akasha sitting in the center of my chest, staring down at me. She grinned, and I froze, holding my breath. Her form wavered, and for a split second, I could see another creature lurking behind the feline features and the long, elegant fur. Then it was gone, and she was just Akasha, the evil, grinning cat. "Don't you dare try to get rid of me," the cat said without moving her mouth. Yep, I was losing my ever-loving mind. Maybe I already had. I laughed. Akasha bent so her nose was close to mine. "We both know there's only one person left in the world who's really important to you. A life for life. Don't make me take hers." "This isn't real. You're not real. I'm hallucinating," I said. "It is, and you still have to be punished for what you did to me. That shotgun was a bitch move, and it hurt like fucking hell. And then you told Renee that you would keep an eye out for me, like I wasn't blown all over that basement in tiny little kitty bits." Akasha shook her head. "I want to help you to keep your word to your daughter." She stretched and her claws curled into my stomach and chest. Instinctively, I knocked the cat to the floor and sat up, clutching the wounds and sucking air between my clenched teeth. The pain was too real. I wasn't dreaming, and I wasn't sure if hallucinations could inflict pain. The vile creature had threatened my daughter's life. If I killed Akasha, she would return again, and my daughter would die. If I couldn't kill the animal, I could capture her and lock her away maybe. Trap her. I called for her quietly, not wanting Renee to hear and come into the room. I didn't think I could explain to her what I was doing, and I knew I was in the wrong state of mind to make up a believable lie. I got on the floor and looked under the recliner. Not there. Under the love seat. Not there. Under the couch. She was there, crouched, growling, daring me to reach under and grab her. I did. I grabbed her by the back of her neck and dragged her little ass out, claws ripping at the carpet fibers, hissing and thrashing. As I sat up, she turned and hit my face like a tornado of razors, and I felt each slice. The blood poured hot and thick into my hands. Claws pierced my left eyeball, and the last thing I felt was the wet plop as it hit my cheekbone and dangled there. Thankfully, I passed out. I woke up in the hospital. I tried to tell Renee that the cat did it, but she just shook her head sadly and started to cry. The doctor told me what I already knew. I lost the eye. They had to remove the eyeball. The damage was too severe to save it. The rest of what he said faded into the background noise. The doctor patted my shoulder. "You're damn lucky that you didn't cut your throat when you fell out of that picture window." fell out the window." "I didn't fall out of a window." Renee rushed to me. "Yes, you did, Mom. While I was making something for dinner, you stood up on the couch and you fell through the window. You're probably sleepwalking because of all the stress you've had the last few weeks. You know, with the deaths." There was no point arguing. If I did, they might have stuck me in the psych ward for a nice long visit. So I kept my stupid mouth shut. A few days later, I was released. The window had been fixed, and someone had tried to clean up all the blood, but there was still a big stain on the carpet right below that window. I hadn't been behind the couch. I'd been in front of it when the attack happened. Akasha walked in and sat right where I had been when she took my eye. She started licking her paw and rubbing it over her left eye repeatedly. A little bit of harmless, completely normal grooming. After Renee left, I grabbed a big old pickle jar, suited up in my ex-husband's leftover firefighter gear, and I went after Akasha. I caught the cat and stuffed it into the jar as quickly as I could, screwing the lid on tight before hauling it down into the basement. Every so often, I head down there, but the cat still talks to me, begging to be let out. I think I finally captured whatever the hell Akasha was.